He has my endorsement because we can't go back to the old Republican guard of yesteryear.
And my friend here, we met in person, and I told him that I would endorse Donald J. Trump for President of the United States.
We need Donald Trump.
His contenders are dropping, and Donald Trump's lead is extending. The former president has the momentum to be the Republican nominee in 2024.
And a very good competitor, Ron, as you know.
But it's a rocky road ahead for Trump. A jam-packed schedule of legal issues is dominating his schedule over the next few months, all while he's darting across the country campaigning to be president again. Can Trump overcome these challenges and be the Republican nominee for a third time? Sky News Digital Originals presents Trump's Road to Nomination. The diary of 77-year-old Donald Trump's next few months is a lot to process. Between a presidential campaign and a myriad of legal issues, there'll be no rest for Donald Trump. On the back of a big win in New Hampshire this week against Nikki Haley, the former president is set to gear up for his chaotic February. This month is all about his campaign. Trump has 3 Republican primaries in 22 days during Nevada, South Carolina and Michigan. In terms of legal cases, on February 15, the New York State Supreme Court has scheduled a hearing on his alleged falsified business records case. That trial is scheduled to start in March. March will be a busy month for Trump, inside and outside the courtroom, with a few key clashes for the presidential hopeful. Super Tuesday on March 5 is one of the most significant days in the Republican race, when voters head to the polls for 15 Republican primaries and caucuses. The day before, on March 4, a US district judge has tentatively scheduled a federal election conspiracy trial. On that same day, North Dakota will hold its Republican caucus. There are 29 Republican primaries scheduled in March. Donald Trump is also due back in court March 25, just 2 days after the Louisiana primary. He's facing charges over alleged falsified business records to pay hush money to porn star Stormy Daniels. That court date could be shifted if it overlaps with another trial. March can only be summarised as mayhem for Trump. At this stage, April is a quieter month, but that could quickly change. Either the federal election interference case or the New York business records could drag into April, which would impact the first primaries of the month on April 2. May will be another ride on the legal roller coaster that is the Trump Chronicles. May 20 marks the beginning of a legal saga that promises to keep us on the edge of our seats. Trump faces a whopping 32 counts of Espionage Act violations, 6 counts of obstruction, and a dash of false statements. This is all relating to the classified documents found at his Mar-a-Lago residence. June could be a moment for Donald Trump to catch his breath, but that's unlikely. The classified documents trial could extend into this month, impacting his momentum in the lead-up to the big day in July. The big day being the Republican National Convention, which kicks off on July 15 in Milwaukee. A political extravaganza that sets the stage for the upcoming acts in this political drama. If it's anything like 2016 and 2020, the convention will cement Donald Trump as the Republican nominee for 2024. As August comes around and Election Day approaches, Trump's legal woes will continue. Fulton County DA Fani Willis takes the spotlight on August 5, proposing a trial date for the Georgia 2020 election case. Why? Because according to her, the Trump campaign was the star player in what she calls a criminal enterprise. It's an enormous schedule ahead for Donald Trump, and his legal woes could impact the time he has to spend on the campaign trail.
It made the United States, and large numbers of voters, Republicans and some independents, and even some Democrats, say, forget it. It's Trump or bust. We cannot allow people to do this with the legal system. We cannot allow the Justice Department and various state justice departments to be manipulated in this way for lawfare, to take down the people's preferred democratically elected or potentially elected candidate. It's never been done before in the United States. This is banana republic stuff. And we've always had a hard line against it. This is a first in U.S. history for a reason. So there was that element of it. And then secondly, it kept Trump in the news and the so-called earned media where they, you don't pay for it. It's not an advertisement. You just get covered, which is worth a lot to presidential candidates all the time. It got him so much earned media. And in a way that like his controversies didn't anymore drive the news cycles because we've kind of gotten used to Trump. You don't get the same adrenaline surge when he sends out a mean tweet as he used to. This was the new adrenaline surge. It was the new thing that would keep Trump in the news all the time during the primary contest and going forward. The trials will do it for him over the next year as we lead up to November. So, it is a be careful what you wish for thing, because I know the Democrats think this is just going to completely shock and horrify the electorate when we get out of a Republican primary. But I think it may work the other way. It may shock and horrify the independents on what the Democrats are doing to him.
But every time something like this happens, all the other indictments over paying porn stars hush money or the ridiculous civil fraud case running in New York at the moment, it all just makes Trump more popular. It proves what he said all along, which is that he wants to drain the swamp and the establishment will do everything to stop him. Every single one of these cases is priceless publicity for Trump. It emboldens his supporters and his cause. They're literally handing him votes on a platter. If you want to guarantee Trump gets elected in 2024, then keep the cases coming. They say all publicity is good publicity, and in Trump's case, it is gold.
Another question, a lot of people consider this really a show trial in many ways, both starting from the premise of what the indictment is about all the way to how it's been conducted. And, that was one thing in the mix of that they decided that him doing that is some sort of interference in the legal process. And given he'd made attacks against his judge and I think his wife and other things previously that were improper. And so the judge and the court believed that was enough cause to give him essentially that gag order. Others on the other side say, well, that was actually illegal and he didn't have the right to do that. And then Trump is going to Trump, where if he thinks it's a show trial that isn't going to amount to much anyway. This is a civil trial, so there's no jail time at the end of it. The worst that it'll be will be a fine, if at all. He just decided that he's going to take his 6 minutes and do whatever say whatever he wants to say to move the conversation and suck up the oxygen, as he does very well.
It does kind of seem that the last hurdle for Trump to become the nominee is not necessarily Nikki Haley, but very much these legal proceedings that are underway. And of all of them, the election subversion case that's due to begin on the 4th of March does seem to be the most imposing in terms of a hurdle for him ahead of the nomination. But for Nikki Haley, that's something that she's really driving home. And especially now that she is in this one-on-one race, it's a message that she has been absolutely driving, that chaos follows Donald Trump and these legal proceedings are a distraction, and both he and Biden are too old to be president again. They're all messages that Nikki Haley is really trying to sell to kind of like pump life into her presidential campaign. And it, whether or not that message has any cut through, it sort of remains to be seen.
In the midst of legal battles, Trump claims a political conspiracy against him, leveraging the cases to boost campaign donations. A recent Reuters Ipsos poll in early December reveals 52% of Republican voters would stick with Trump even if he's convicted, and 46% would still support him behind bars. As the legal drama unfolds, Trump's base remains steadfast, raising questions about the future of American politics.
What happened, though, was that the indictments really rallied support around Trump. In March, when that first indictment came, you immediately saw this bump for Trump. He bumped by like 10 points in the polls, while DeSantis saw his support dwindle by 5 points. So what has happened here is that a lot of Republicans, they love DeSantis. They think his policies are great, but they have said, we have to support Donald Trump, because to not support Donald Trump is to tell Democrats that they can get away with subverting our justice system to take out their primary political opponent. And we will not let that stand.
The thing that you see in the media, Paul, is that a lot of them never talk to, know, meet with a Trump voter. And if my job is as a journalist, just to stay open-minded to them all and see what is the world telling me, not who am I rooting for? I am very able to separate that from what is the world telling me. And the world has been telling me, and everyone who's willing to listen, very clearly that Republicans love Donald Trump, that the Republican Party is his party and has been for quite some time now, and that while there are still some who don't like Donald Trump within the Republican Party, they are a clear minority. And while it was a divided field, it was always clear that Trump was going to have more votes than any other singular person. And now that he's left with just one other person standing, and that person isn't anything like Trump in her policies and her approach to anything, there's just not enough votes to put her over the top. So it's very clear who is going to win this nomination. And the only real big question left is who's going to win the next election, which comes in November.
Easy. People saw that I was being honest about all this stuff, regardless of the media narrative.
Ron DeSantis has now exited the race following a long list of other Republican nominees.
You know, I don't think anybody could have done it because Trump is just too big a character. If DeSantis had run in 2012, he would have been the nominee and he might have won. Really. Before the walking ball of charisma entered, somebody who's just a normie could win. But Trump is just too big a personality, too big an entertainer, too big a star. He does suck up the oxygen in any room, and it's very hard to overcome that as a normal human. And Ron DeSantis, if anything, had a little bit less than your average amount of charisma. Behind the scenes, he can do it. You know, I was saying on my show today, when I met with him, he was actually very funny. He did an impression of Trump, which was spot on and very funny, like legitimately made me laugh with it. He never legitimately made me laugh during the entire campaign. He wouldn't show that side of himself. And I really wonder whether it's like you go to Yale as like a star baseball player, and then you go to Harvard Law School, and then you join the JAG Corps, you know, the Navy lawyers, like the Tom Cruise, Top Gun lawyers. You come out, you run for Congress, you know, you just have a perfect track record in life. Whether you become risk averse in a unique way, that's not great for politicians. You know, you don't want to take certain risks. You don't want to put yourself out there. You don't want to use humor. You don't want to be too self-deprecating because you have a certain image of yourself that you need to maintain to be that Harvard guy. And I just really think that is DeSantis, and it undermined him. If he could have been looser and shown us his real personality, which I do believe is looser than he projected, not by a huge margin, but there's a delta there. He would have done better in a non-Trump year. He never had any chance in a Trump year.
Both of those candidates spent so much money, Nikki and Ron, you know, far more than in the past. And, you know, someone calculated the return. It was, you know, $6,500 per vote. You know, that was the return, which is a terrible return. But also, I think with Ron, he wanted to get on Trump's good side. I think that makes sense, right? I mean, he wanted to, you know, preserve whatever goodwill still remain between the two men. You know, there could be a cabinet position in the offing in the future. Who knows? So I think it was a real strategic decision there. I mean, I noticed Ron DeSantis tweeted just recently that he won't be paying $1 of Donald Trump's legal bills. So they're still not friends again.
The thing about Trump is, even when you know he's lying, when you know he's just saying stuff, you know, like, there's going to be a great plan, everyone's going to love it on abortion. Okay, that's not possible, right? But it's just a line that he uses. I'm going to be the one to come up with something everyone's going to love on abortion. Really? Are you really? You kind of forgive him because he's got this swagger. Like, I'm speaking of your average Republican voter here. He's got this swagger that makes you say, like, it's going to be fine. Whatever he's going to do, he's going to handle it. And I just trust him net. And they like strength. I mean, honestly, like, this is why Putin is still so popular in Russia. They like strength. Voters like strength. Not all. I realize a lot of people hate both of these men, and very good reasons on the Putin side. In DeSantis, you could see the opposite. Like, despite the fact that he wanted us to perceive him as a strong man, and he was to some extent in COVID, when he got out there on the presidential debate field and stage, he started to waver. He gave that weird statement to Tucker Carlson on his position in Ukraine, and then immediately walked it back when he got hit by the more neocon wing of the party for saying something they thought was asinine. And he didn't just give this is how I feel, which is a Trump move. You know, he showed unsteadiness. And even on the debate stage, he seemed a little too afraid to attack. He didn't seem to, like, get in anybody's face. Now, that's not his style, but I'm just saying there was a telegraphing almost on a subliminal level of a layer of timidity that I don't think people want to see in their president.
Former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley is the only candidate Trump has to compete with, but her chances are not great.
They've seized on her vulnerabilities. You know, she is a neocon. She certainly sounds like a neocon. You know, she keeps saying we need a new generation of change, new generation in the Republican Party. And yes, she's 20 plus years younger than Trump, 25 years younger, maybe even more. But her policies sound an awful lot like George W. Bush's when it comes to, the military and how bellicose she is, and when she talks about foreign countries and their threats. And the Republican Party has moved on from that era. I mean, they've tried it. It didn't go well, and they learned. And I don't think there's a big appetite for it. There's a section of the Republican Party, in particular, Jewish Republicans, are much more hawkish than anybody, and for good reason. I mean, look what just happened to Israel and the threats that Jews are under here in America. And I do believe they have a core belief that, peace through strength is the way. But I think a lot of others have just been too burned and they're over that era. And Nikki Haley represents the past to them, not the next generation of leadership. And the donor class money is a thing. I mean, it is a thing. Don't get me wrong. Whoever winds up getting the nomination, the donor class comes in and bends the knee. All those bankers on Wall Street, they come in and they bend the knee. They need the president of the United States to love them. So eventually, there's always that relationship. But if they buy you nice and early, then you're more beholden to them. And there's a fear that they can shape your positions and that they're your original, benefactor. And she's benefiting from that in terms of dollars right now, but also getting hurt because people have a natural aversion to the donor class, especially in today's day and age. So some of it's true and it's hurting her. And I just don't think, look, maybe I'm crazy. Maybe she'll resurrect somehow, but it's over for her. It's done. The contest is over.
I honestly don't even know why Nikki Haley is sticking in the race at this point. Like I said, she's expected to do better in New Hampshire than she did in Iowa, but I mean, she really doesn't have much of a chance at all in winning the nomination. Her game plan right now might be to just kind of wait this out and see if somehow the Democrats succeed in putting Trump in jail or making him not eligible to be elected somehow with all of these phony trumped up charges. She may also just be sticking around because she thinks that even though she may not win in this election, next time in 4 years from now, she'll have a better shot. Who knows? But yes, I agree with you. I think Trump has this thing locked up. The much more interesting question is who will be the Democratic nominee, because there are lots of whispers around that at the last minute, Joe Biden might step aside. He's quite old. He's got all these scandals piling up with his son, Hunter Biden, and he's polling really pathetically with his base. Right now, national polls are showing him and Donald Trump pretty much tied. So things are looking bad for Biden, and that's actually the side of the aisle where I think things could get a little more interesting.
Trump's got these serious court cases coming up in March and May, and for all the excitement from his team at the moment around his performance, I mean, these things can really go downhill very quickly in these cases. He could end up in jail or at least convicted by the convention in the middle of the year. So yes, there is an argument for staying in, but she's already spent something like $40 million, and the money doesn't come out of thin air. She's getting it from donors, and so the donors have to agree to keep spending it. And if they don't see a return on that money, then they may quietly tell her to stop. So look, it's hard to say yet.
First of all, she has a right. I mean, you can stay in as long as you want, but the reality is, you notice she came out real quick. The vote that came in early was where she did better. The big suburbs of Boston, the Manchester, Concord, New Hampshire, those bedroom suburban communities just north of Boston. She knew she would do well, where independents were going to play a big role. I get what she did tactically. She came out, she made her statement, she said she was going to move on. She made a couple of mistakes. Number one, Nevada is actually the next stop. She's just not on the ballot there, which kind of is perplexing. The second thing is South Carolina is 31 days away. If you think about it, a campaign needs, proverbial gas to go on. And the question is right now, she has to show supporters and donors that she has a viable path forward. And obviously she didn't do well in Iowa tonight. She might have done a little better than expected, but she still got blown out. And so and you look at the polls in South Carolina, she's down 30 points in the state that she was elected governor twice. And almost every major endorsement from the federal level, from the senators to the current governor to the state representatives, are all with Trump. The problem is that I don't see a viable path forward for her. I get what she did. Even if she continues to go past South Carolina, Super Tuesdays, 10 states, 870 delegates at stake, and you have to be able to run more than one state. So she's been able to park herself, if you will, in one state, Iowa, then New Hampshire, and she wants to go home to South Carolina. But you can't run into, these are supposed to allow the process to have a little time to percolate. She doesn't have the capability to go into to Super Tuesday the way that Donald Trump does. And that's where, this thing is definitely going to end. I was surprised that she chose to use that path to get out early tonight, try to pretend to fight another day. But I'll be interested to see if she actually can make it to South Carolina.
What is her rationale, just knocking off second place for the next month?
Well, that could have a number of ramifications. In 1980, George H.W. Bush came into New Hampshire, having beaten Ronald Reagan in Iowa, which Reagan basically skipped, and he was the front runner. And he got beat badly here in Iowa, and he hung on in the race. He was careful about criticizing Reagan, but he did to some extent. And in the end, he ended up on the ticket. So these are the kinds of things that can happen. And Haley, you're hearing a lot of unbelievably silly talk these days about how, well, Nikki Haley is appealing to people outside the party. They're appealing to all these independents. And you're hearing people talk about, well, she's really a liberal. That's all balderdash. She's not a liberal. She's not as conservative on some issues as some would like her to be, but she's a conservative. And if she does, in fact, appeal to independents and others outside the party, she could be helpful to whoever wins, which we presume will be Trump.
Well, you say Bush the elder worked his way onto that ticket with Reagan.
He did.
By staying in and having a little juice. I floated that idea with Kayleigh to Karl Rove, and Karl Rove poo-pooed it in the way that Karl Rove does and said Donald Trump would never have his hand forced like that.
We'll see.
We'll see.
Well, the truth, look, the Republicans are a minority party in this country, right? Now, they can win elections, and they do. But they need to be able to attract support from outside the ranks of the Republican Party. And Donald Trump, while he's very strong within the Republican Party, is much weaker outside of it. And that's the reality that this season so far has shown us.
Are you telling me that Donald Trump, in order to win this election against Joe Biden, might need Nikki Haley on the ticket?
Or a candidate who has the same attributes in the sense of the ability to pull in votes from outside the base of the Republican Party?
Do we know who that person would be?
Not.
We don't know. And you look at some of these polls, and it's obviously very emotional. And over half of Trump voters say if Nikki is the nominee, there's no way that they would ever stomach voting for her.
That's now.
That's emotion.
Well, you want to win the election?
I believe they do.
So these people who are for Donald Trump with all of his policies, and Nikki Haley somehow wins the nomination, they're going to vote for Biden or not vote? I don't think so.
With all signs pointing to Donald Trump as the 2024 Republican nominee, speculation has begun on who would be the 2028 GOP candidate.
Both of them now are sort of coming to the realization that Donald Trump is going to be the winner, but Trump can only serve one more term, which means that even if he wins, 2028 will be an open race, and two of the leading contenders are going to be Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley. So this was a chess move designed to sort of pigeonhole Nikki as an establishment centrist politician. Not sure that's going to work or not, but that's what he's trying to do in anticipation of 4 years from now.